Last we saw our
See,
heroes.
well, we don't. Yeah, don't start recording. Hey, we're only 15 minutes after. I've had technical difficulties that lasted twice as long as this. That's not bad.
22.
I actually, what's annoying is that whole conversation that we just had. There was actually, this is the problem with tangents and the time of day and everything else. There was something, and I don't remember it now, that there was an angle through all of that that was meant to be a direct and highly informative and rich segue into this stuff. And I can't now for the life of me remember what the hell it was, why I started it. I actually had a point to that whole thing, but you couldn't tell by looking. Anyway, okay. When we last left our heroes. So when we last left our heroes, we're actually gonna. I want to pull the camera back and spotlight's not quite the right word, but I want to move the camera around a little bit and ask some questions. And I feel bad because I feel like I should kind of prep people and say, hey, I'm going to ask you about stuff like this. Um, but I want to look at what's going on a little bit in the city while all of this is happening because in this space in this with the geode and everything like down the ceilings high above and everything and really nearly kind of underneath the walls of the city you can still feel some of the earth tremors and shakes. Stuff is still falling. Not, I mean, one of the great statues probably hasn't tumbled yet, but pieces have. And you've got some dust, rock, grit, and stuff floating down from above. It's got this weird. Has anyone ever like cut tile
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
so that for those of you who have, there's a kind of hot. I don't know how to explain it except it smells like cut tile, but it's a weirdly. Actually, you know what? So you take this sort of the sense of hot, any kind of hot metal kind of smell a little bit, and the dust in the air, but weirdly, it always reminds me a little bit of the smell that you get off the fog from dry ice. And that may be the tile I was using or the whatever, but there's a little bit of that. I guess maybe it's the rock dust in the air, but also some weird sense that for those of you who do not spend a lot of time underground, you don't normally expect. Like weirdly, there's a weird sweetness that at the same time your body is telling you is bad, kind of scent in the air. So the camera pulls up in a way. I'm gonna lay this first one on Margie because I think she's so the camera goes past the group of people that are past that are sort of amassed behind Anne, and then up and back, and we're up in the we're up through the ground and into the city streets. Some panic, some certainly some looting, random violence, people rushing about, clutching their that the classic family clutching what they can to them and trying to stay close to each other, moving through the streets and so forth. And we come to the camera settles on the activity not far away in the well a little bit farther away, but in the neighborhood near where you guys kind of started, but kind of in the opposite direction and stuff. And we'll put this in a comic book so we can be given to know that this is that at least some of the people here on the street are people that we would know or the other of our primary characters know. So you've got the brother or the son and his wife of the innkeeper, but a lot of other people are active in the neighborhood moving around. As the human rep, um, we've talked about this before. Like humans are like the people that fill in the cracks, fill in the spaces. They're kind of everywhere. They're kind of ubiquitous, but they're never really the ones at the takeover stuff that run things necessarily, unless maybe it's in the background or something like that. So, can you give
Not the
us?
aggressors.
Yeah, and they're not. It's not very common except in maybe smaller villages. I think probably to see like a human mayor necessarily. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Is it? I mean, is that a fairly common thing? Or, but I mean, in a big city like this, my thought is the humans aren't the ones in charge, but maybe the neighborhood borough person is a human here or there. That's not so unremarkable. Or that's not so remarkable. I don't know. But how in duress in this space with everything that's happening and the cracks continuing to appear in the statues and really this is a loaded thing I would never do if my wife were on the game, but really that were this a TV show, there's no way the viewers wouldn't be reminded of the time between when the planes hit the towers on 9/11 and until they fell. That sense of impending badness. It can't really be this bad. Certainly these great things that have always been here are not going to fall, but continued signs that it's never going to be right again, or maybe something bad's going to, something truly phenomenally bad's going to happen. That sense of these great tall pillars of power and symbols are about to come down. In that duress, in this space, how do the humans act? To each other, to others? What do we
You have
learn?
to remember that humans don't as much an emphasis on location.
Okay.
You know, the primary inhabitants of areas do.
So for them, it's not so
they
much about
are
the place. They're not. Are they not as shook then, or are they're dealing with the event, not so much like, oh my God, this place that we put so much importance in is crumbling. That's less a big deal than avoid falling rocks.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that
because
it?
they're not, I wouldn't say they're nomadic because that implies that they're continually moving,
Right.
but they are a people that are without a home.
They're not strongly associated with place.
Yeah. So, I mean, for them, it's probably actually easier for some of the,
If they're crying, it's not because of like this great place that they're so attached to. It's because if they're crying, it's because this is just a bunch of scary events. Is that right?
I mean, I think it's
I'm not
that, and I
making
think it's
statements.
also,
Please take this all as
no.
questions, not
So I think
statements.
what they're upset about is, okay, no one wants to, like, I would say that they're upset because no one wants to just pick everything up and move.
Sure.
But on the other hand, I think that I would say that culturally there is sort of a resignation that 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 it's not permanent, right?
How do they? Thank you. How do they? Groups of humans, that kind of thing. Lots of people, dwarves in the area. Uh, Probably a straight. Virens. I mean, obviously you've got the great Toscan Empire, but are you just going to see orcs scattered away from that, like just out in the world? Living, not obviously merchants, but I mean, like, obviously there would be merchants, but like, just, I don't really live in the kingdom. I just live someplace else.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah. So not super common, but certainly they're out there. You got your dwarves. You've got, I don't know how common fey creatures, elves necessarily would naturally be, but certainly they're out there. But you got all these people in duress. How do we see humans acting under this duress? Is it very small family clusters? On the scale from we must all rise up and band together and move as one through the city so that we will all be protected together and care for all living creatures regardless of whether they're human or dwarf or blah blah blah, to it down to something in the middle where it's like basically nuclear family units that are generally, when called upon for help, sort of helping each other, down to every man for himself. I would knife my own boy to get out of this city safely. What are we seeing? How are we seeing them act toward each other?
I mean, I would say that, and I don't know about this city in particular, but in a lot of places, there's uh, there's not a lot of places where there's really integrated neighborhoods.
Right.
And so, for humans, there is always sort of the equivalent of a neighborhood watch, and if it's part of the mythos that they are people without a land and they'll be, continually to move on until such an event happens that's not the case, right? So
Mm.
they're not backwards looking, they're forward looking in that sense. It's not like we want to get our home back, because the mythos isn't that, there's,
They're not looking for the
some
promised land necessarily.
there's no Camelot that they're looking for.
I see.
But there is sort of this that there is an event in the future that might provide that, right? So I would say that their communities are reasonably organized, from the sense of, um, in areas that don't have it. From a city perspective, there's, neighborhood watch, there's neighborhood fire, things like that. So I think that while it's not going to be, okay, we're going to get everybody and count every head, there's going to be some natural people in there that are going to be, geared towards
They step up and
organizing.
take responsibility. They help, or they call
It's
out,
sort
or
of
they.
like, you know, like I said, like a fire brigade, right?
All right.
There's somebody who calls out the fire brigade and directs them.
You've got your
So
whether it's the the stoic blacksmith, or the bossy everybody's bossy nosy great aunt who steps up and starts snapping out orders to everybody to get them moving or something. But that it happen. It's just less organized, and it's less about them having a job to play as much as who steps up. Is that right? Like, who just decides to step up in these moments?
um
Or were these already authority people
I would say that,
within our communities?
I mean, I would say it's probably both. That
All right.
the people who are already authorities in the community, i.e., the fire brigade captain, are definitely going to be people that are more likely to be the ones stepping forward, because that's what they're used to doing. I won't say that there's, like, there's not like a human mayor of this particular suburb who's going to, you know, be seen as the one voice that everybody is going to listen to, or is expecting to decide, right? Is expecting to make the
Sure.
calls.
Sure.
But it's definitely going to be more community oriented.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. How was I gonna? Okay, so you've got the what you're seeing here, and we're still not very far out through the city. This isn't a group of people that are like over by the airships that are trying to leave, or even at the gates and stuff. They haven't. The son and his daughter that we whether see in the pre-crits or whatever at some point in time, aren't far along. And we come to understand from their sort of talking, sort of the words that are kind of shouted, whispered, muttered back and forth to each other, is the reason that they're not is because they went to the inn to grab mom and dad, or be there, and the place is abandoned, and now they're trying to figure out what to do to get out. And so they're running now into the clumps of people who are like motioning in one direction, or go here, or head to the boats, and somebody else is shouting, don't go to the boats, go to the gates. You're going to have to get out that way. There's no way there's not going to be enough boats. There aren't enough boats in this whole city to get the whole city out. And we are seeing some of the ships lift off in the distance. And they're obviously torn between one or the other. They kind of you get the intention that, after a rather grim look and not knowing what else to do, they head towards the gates rather than towards the boats because one of the boats, at least as it rises, you can see in the distance, has people clinging still to like the outside of it, like hanging on to the ballast ropes and so on and so forth, falling from ever greater heights or finally clawing themselves aboard. Is essentially a melee across the deck, barely visible, and they're like, yeah, okay. They just like anything's better than that, and heading for the city gates.
There also may be people that, if they're heading towards the gates, there may be people there who have seen the group that was with us. We were pretty obvious.
Well, you guys weren't headed for the gates though. You guys were headed to
right,
but you're saying they might have heard that they were
There might be some people who decided not to come along with us.
Or who saw, or at least like, oh, I saw your mom and dad. They were heading out this other direction. Crazy. They were heading the wrong way. They weren't even heading towards the gates. Huh. To the group, to my fellow creators. Do I need to do anything, do you think, to make that happen? I don't think I do. I just like that. Do I just like that? I think I just like that and say, yeah, that's what's happening. Are we good with that? I don't think there's any, I mean, there's no kind of like spend a fate point to make this thing happen kind of deal, and I don't really feel like there needs to be. I don't feel like there's really a move for that necessarily. Although and what's that? Yeah, it's just story stuff. Yeah, I'm just seeing how it ties into some other things here. This is kind of an open question to really anybody, but I'm kind of looking in the general direction of both Viren's and Carabas because of some of the higher level, mid-level, lower level geography, some thoughts about the crystals, the islands, that kind of thing came from Bill. And Carabas's character is more closely tied to the Fae. What I'm curious about with the boats, the airships rather, is this crystal based in the same way that they float the islands, or is it parallel but otherwise unconnected magic that's actually not crystal based, done by fairies and stuff like that? So is it more like we work with dwarves?
Whatever stone makes floating islands float, and put it in the middle of a gyroscope.
That makes perfect sense to me.
It absolutely makes perfect sense to me.
Even though that doesn't bode well.
So having said that,
it shouldn't, like we established that first on.
There's a lot of bad there. Having said that, how do we feel about the idea that there's maybe some parallel evolution, like thinking like the fairy have flying craft that aren't crystal based, but basically, but nobody really, but the fairy really understand how the hell they do it. The elves, I should say. It's just an elf thing.
It's deliberately designed to be easy to create and maintain, actually. So I don't see why that would be. But if you want to declare that.
Well, I'm not saying that crystals aren't. I'm just saying, like, do we want crystals to be the only way that we get a ship in the air, or are there some other parallel evolutions?
The intention was that the ley lines are the way that you get a ship in the air.
It's just a matter of how you tap into them.
Right.
I like it. I like that. That's good. Good stuff. And the idea of the ley lines being in some ways a way to limit it, until you get to the efficiencies of scale, I guess, where you get the islands that are sort of free flowing and not necessarily, although they do probably in the same way that I'm going to say jet streams, and I don't mean jet streams. Jet streams in the water. What are they?
Currents.
The big, well, yeah, but the big ones.
The jet stream.
The jet stream in the, sure. But in the same way, like, so the islands technically drift. They don't really necessarily follow like the ley lines, but they still probably, left to their own devices, will drift along that same current over a if not geological, then at least seasonal time frame. Like they move very slowly. you know,
It can
rubber
be
duck.
influenced by multiple ley lines
Sure,
too.
yeah, exactly. So you get rubber ducks that show
It
up in Portugal for no apparent reason, like 700 of them, and nobody really knows where they came from. Anyway, so random stuff, filling in a little bit of the world. So chaos up above, fights on the deck. The camera probably even zooms in enough because we paid the extra budget to have a fight scene on a flying ship, and so we did that. So we get to see some people, because the ship is becoming unstable. There's too many people on it, so people are trying to throw each other off to get up high enough to get away from the thing. We see the cracks showing in the arms of an outstretched Ohyr, thus marking the first session that I actually pronounced the people's name correctly, as opposed to Ophir. I don't know why I thought it was OPH. I put a P in there somehow at some point.
It's an H.
Yeah. I'm only remembering null res because I think of it as null res, as in don't resurrect me because they're all undead. Like, my brain does stupid things. Anyway. So the fight and the chaos and that tension stays with us as we come back down through, as the thing is crossing over the wall and we're passing down through the wall. People up on the wall and the cracks in the statue, and we're following one of those cracks as it kind of comes down the body. It's cracking down the stone. It comes down the body, and we continue to follow, even though the crack, although massive, peters out before it reaches ground, but we continue down through the ground and into this cavern where we've seen the general and Wynn exchange blows. Wynn sort of like knocked back the general, hissing in annoyance. Other basic flurries of action. Carabas, Carabas and Eki, like in a bit of a, more germane exchange until there's a bit of a flurry of action, and then, the scowling and so forth. Rowan kind of watching everything, keeping an eye, primarily, interestingly, if I understand things correctly, despite the fact of this Ohyr general and Eki, although that might be maybe a bit of a social slight just to not be paying that close of an attention to him, really kind of focusing more on the 30 or so guys with, cheap city crossbows that are slowly sidling back from some of this action. He seems to be paying more attention to them than that action and, the other tensions and so forth. And although I think, Rowan, would be fair to say that when you notice what Carabas is carrying, and we kind of identified this as like this teleportation crystal, that kind of draws your attention.
Yeah.
I have a question for you then, in your command lore role. I'm gonna put out one fact, but I want you to expound upon it in great detail. I'm gonna say that these things are rare. The question is, on a scale from I have an Apple Watch in 2015 to I have a cell phone in 2000 to I have a laptop in 1995 to I have a cell phone in 1985 to I have one of the artifacts that makes Indiana Jones fight Nazis in 1930.
The Hope
Nazi
Diamond.
fighting.
How rare are these things on that
Nazi
scale? Nazi fighting?
Why would I not pick Nazi?
I mean, I have a cell phone in 1985 is pretty rare. It's not
Yeah,
like
but your cell service is going to be horrible.
I get that. I'm not saying level of functionality. I'm just saying how many people would likely.
Can I say that if I've got the cell phone teleport crystal, I want really good service?
So
You're in a tunnel. You're not getting any service.
Drop signals are not an option here.
So what I'm hearing is, like, having identified this as one, like a teleportation crystal, you can probably, like, you now know where like one of 5 of them are, where one of
It has
the
a
5
name.
of them are. Like, maybe.
Just went through the rings of Middle Earth, so yeah.
Why do you have
Yeah,
the emerald teleportation crystal? Are we talking like that rare? Like one of the great lost, religious artifacts, or one of the great lost
Palanters.
what Palantirs?
Yes.
Perfectly
Yeah.
cromulent example. Love it.
That's a perfectly cromulent example.
Yeah, exactly. So is it something the Harbingers made or something the Harbingers recovered?
That depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you. Well, okay, I'm
That
asking.
depends on who you ask.
According to Rowan, from Rowan's point of view, what does Rowan think?
According to Rowan, some people say that it was made by the Magisters of old, before the Eternal Council, and others say that it's something that they came across.
Oh.
In your case, it predates the council.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. So then it becomes like, well, was it? So does the council predate the O'Hare? Like the formal council?
No, because theirs is done, or they do their leadership in the style of the O'Hare Empire.
Oh, okay.
So they're O'Hare fanboys.
Because my question is like, does anybody have a pet theory that this is O'Hare stuff, or possibly even an older civilization?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. I mean, you have a lot of, like you said, you're a lot of Rowan stuff as well. One of my instructors told me.
Yes.
So you've probably gotten mixed answers on that whole thing.
Yep.
Is that fair? Okay.
Yeah. It mostly came down to the question, well, why can't we just make more?
Well,
You don't know what you're asking.
There you go. I like it.
Why don't we just make more Palantir? No, that's not. Yeah.
Why?
One, that's a bad plan. Two,
But is it because you think it's a bad plan, or is it because you really don't know how to do it, or is it 3, you have no clue as to what would happen if you actually tried to create one?
Why do you think we need to pick one of those things? Why can't it be all of those things? It could be
Can
all
be.
of those. Yeah.
It could be multiple choice,
You
multiple.
ask those questions like somebody who's never blown up the sun.
Okay, so a flurry of various activities happen. Carabas is holding. The halfling is holding a Palantir. We know how that went. Or
At
functionally.
least it
so.
was one of the portable Palantirs.
Yeah, it's. I actually finally came up with the perfect. I kept describing it like inches and blah blah blah. It's the size of a soap dish. The end. Like that's how big it is. It's the size of a soap dish, and rectangular, basically rectangular and somewhat rounded. So there you go. And probably all the other stuff I said got you to that point, but I was thinking about it and I'm like, why didn't I just say that? Oh, I love what Bill just put up.
Uh-oh.
He says, the teleportation gems are the tears of a god. When people ask why you don't just make more, we ask them, do you want to do something that bring a god? Yeah. There's many good things there. I like how I'm not looking at it, but it pops up on my watch, which I appreciate. Anyway, so Carabas has the gem. Eki is. A lot could go wrong here, and Eki's the tension in Eki's body. And honestly, I feel as though as soon as Carabas kind of flips it up in the air and catches it, both of the Harbingers' attention is suddenly very tightly focused, like banjo string focused on Carabas's like hand.
Yep.
All right, wait, says Eki. Nothing good can come from further altercations here. There have been some misunderstandings or probably some past history that frankly I want no part of. But things could become very difficult here very shortly. And there's a bit of a thump and a crack and some dust sifting down above as though to emphasize his point. I don't think any of us particularly want to be in this situation right now as it stands. And I guarantee none of us want to personally experience what could happen if this, and he sort of gestures in a circular motion to all of what's going on here right now, continues to deteriorate. I'm proposing that we part equitably, and if we must, pick things up at a later date. I will require that. And he kind of levels to like his index and middle finger towards the gem, kind of like pointing a gun, kind of a, I will require that back for reasons that I believe are obvious. And you realize he's kind of talking to Rowan here, so that we can leave and leave you to whatever wily machinations will see you to safety. And in exchange, nothing bad needs to further happen, which will serve no one here. We don't need to be at odds over this, over any of this. And if you decide that we do, we can do that at some later date where the ceiling is not about to fall on our heads and kill us all, or that bloody thing sends us into the heart of a star.
That might get a bit
Yeah.
facial expression from Carabas, but
I mean, I think of like the Puss in Boots thing where you occasionally will see the body language of the ears kind of lowering, like, oh shit, kind of like the lowering head, the lowering ears, the lowering tail, like, what am I holding now? What was that?
The tail bushing out a little bit.
Rowan. And I'm curious, just as a quick pass around the rest of the room, because there's, some glances or the camera's doing a couple of shots. Just in terms of body language, like what? I'll start with anybody who wants to speak up.
And is there in case this doesn't go as agreed upon?
Okay.
I don't have an opinion one way or another whether to
Sure.
trust them or not, but
I'm just looking at
there
like
for when it goes wrong.
I'm just looking for that, and I think you're ready. I'm just looking for that sort of when the camera pauses on you for 2 seconds, like that. That's that readiness is kind of what we see.
eyes a little narrow.
And maybe it's Rowan glancing at various people, and Rowan, who is it okay if you take in your other people? Because I would like to know who you would look at next.
Well,
or not. Not's fine too.
Rowan, at this point, Rowan would be like laser focused back at Eki,
Okay.
and I'm just gonna be like, fellow players, I'm gonna start a fight if no one cares.
That's.
Anybody want to talk me out of it? I am easy to talk out of it. No, not because.
that sounds like an and job.
No, not because I don't want to do it. It's because if it's not fun for everybody, I'm not going to start a fight in the middle of a crumbling cavern where it would be perfect.
Can we get back to this in the heart of a sun thing?
I mean, as a fellow player, And please correct me, because as a fellow player, I will simply note that we have spoken at some length about the challenges inherent in this particular situation with the people that you're facing, all that other kind of stuff. So that's my only concern, is that we haven't changed the power distribution here. Well, we have a little bit, because Carabas could make things go horribly awry at any given moment. But aside from that, there's a lot of ugly here. And that's my only concern, is if you guys are comfortable that there's moves to make, and it certainly pointed at Eki, there are a lot more moves to make. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, as a player, I'd like to move on from this cavern. So, as a character, I might be entertained seeing Rowan go after Eki. As a player, I think we probably would be better off moving forward and re-engaging with these folks at another point in time, and move to a new scene.
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, that's fine.
What?
But my question is, can you still mess with him?
Edward.
I mean, I threw
Can you
Eki's.
do something so that, like, he ends up 2 feet over and falls in a pond? I don't know.
I threw Eki's proposal out there as a way to give us a way to extricate ourselves from kind of a whole thing, with probably some rolls
Oh,
involved.
And I think that you mentioned initially that you had expected this scene to be one of well,
I don't wanna...
confrontation, information, and then departure.
Well, yes, but at the same time, I can't help but push. Actually, I can't help but when you have Sifley and Win, there's going to be some buttons get pushed. Which brings me around. I haven't heard from James either.
I mean, I'm the one who charged forward.
And there's certainly the sense of a very tense standoff there as well. I don't want to downplay that either. I think my read is that if things continue to go in a violent way, that stuff over there will also continue. I mean, there's no hesitation really on the side of either one of those folks. Really, it doesn't feel like necessarily, especially now that I have a better understanding of Wynn's moves. I mean, can I ask for a little bit more clarification? Because some folks have said, I want to start a fight. Some people have been like, I also want to move on. I'm not sure what "that's fine" is pointed at, Bill.
That's fine was in response to the question which was raised, which was, are we okay moving on? And yes, that's fine.
Okay.
And in case it wasn't clear, I had my moment, so I'm totally fine doing whatever.
You've got a personalized face on your grudge now that you can carry around, and
I'm burned from all the spotlight.
I see. Okay. Carabas, what's your bond with Rowan?
What is my bond with Rowan? That is a fantastic question. And
I'm going to get it right once in a while.
My character. My bond with Rowan is...
And Rowan, don't you have one with Carabas as well?
I do. Carabas can be trusted in tight situations.
I once told a lie so good Rowan still thinks it's true.
I once told a lie so good Rowan still thinks it's true. Actually, 2 now. I once told a lie so good Rowan thinks it's true, and Carabas can be trusted in tight situations. Does this qualify? Seems like it would qualify.
It'll get a lot tighter if the roof collapses.
So, knowing that Rowan, Mike, ready for a fight. Knowing that Dave had sort of said, I feel like moving on from this would be a good thing. Knowing that Carabas is currently holding the rock and that you guys have that kind of bond, I feel as though Carabas could maybe read the tension there and what is likely to about happen and do and or say something that may diffuse Rowan's imminent action or do something. I don't want to take away though the spotlight from Rowan because the tension is right there, but Carabas is also the kind of the focal point of this. So what do you two think? Speak now.
I am half inclined to, give a small laugh and flip the emerald back over to Eki. Haha. Easy come, easy go. But that's what I would do in a vacuum. If Rowan has something different, a different approach he wants to take here, I am more than happy to let him be spotlit.
Now, for diffusing the situation, that seems straightforward.
Yeah, I mean,
And kind of with that attitude of, half the fun was just getting the thing out of your hands.
Now,
I mean, I've done that, so.
What? So that's the play.
Deal.
Do we get any kind of as the audience, an extra bit of body language, facial expression, anything like that, that indicates to us that it's also specifically meant to go, this diffuses this. I'm just going to nip this off before it becomes even worse, or is it all the bravado that we see? Or something else? Is it fear? Is it just like, oh crap, I'm holding a nuclear bomb?
Yeah, if we're doing like this series of shots, I can imagine kind of, Carabas doing a quick glance over at Rowan and seeing the tension there, and doing a swallow, and then doing his haha, flip and try to diffuse the situation that way, painting it as bravado.
Certainly,
and to be fair, not unjustly. I did get it off of him.
You did get off of him, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason not to paint the. I mean, the bravado is natural. I was just that's almost assumed. I'm just questioning as to whether or not we see some of that deeper thinking, in the way Carabas picks this stuff out. Okay. Do you toss it to him? Is that what I mean? I'm fine with that. I want to because it helps me narrate what he does.
I say deal and kind of flip it with my thumb, flipping through the air over to him.
And enough away so that he actually has to make a reach for it in a slightly undignified way if he doesn't want to lay it up on the floor.
It's going to fall a little short.
Now to be fair.
Now I did make sure I said deal before I sent it over to him.
Oh, I see.
So that he's committed, and honor-bound general over here is committed to his representation.
Ooh, aren't you a clever kitty? Now he is physically a very skilled combatant, that kind of thing. So he's not going to be like stumbling, reaching for this thing, but he does have to move quickly to get where he wants to be to catch this thing. And although he doesn't look physically put out, the look of the sheerest flash of somebody
Hear you?
just tossed the C4 at me with a detonator jammed in the side. And so there's a honestly, the annoyance is more you made me look panicked for a hot second. So there's a proper glare at you.
I
But
feel
he-
relieved enough not to be holding the gem that I'm willing to let that pass.
But he steps to the side actually, not towards you any further. He almost looks like he's about to step in towards you and do some sort of threat. Instead he turns and he towards Rowan and he takes a couple steps over. So he's about double arm's length away from Rowan. How do the harbingers refer to one another? I'm instinctually wanting to say something like brother or something like that, but I don't know if that's really right.
Magister.
So there's no like,
There.
it's not a familial
implies
thing
there's
or
fellowship involved.
what's that?
That implies that there's some fellowship involved, not one-upsmanship.
Right.
Just the name then?
Title.
There are a great many wheels turning, Magister. I don't know that you want to be on the outside of the rim. Are you sure about this? Where you are?
Yeah, take your gem and go.
Drink it.
He's irritated by this, and that gives you a bit of an opening to pick something up from him, whatever that happens to be. And I'm giving you an in here, if you're so inclined, for either I think probably look closely or speak softly, Magister to Magister, Harbinger to Harbinger. If either of those things intrigues you for a moment here.
Yeah, Rowan doesn't exactly feel like speaking softly right now.
I understand that.
Looking closely.
This is more by inference than anything else, but you guys have got a few leads on what might be happening next. There may be some stuff about what the situation is with the Harbingers. Because I'm not 100% clear, but I think that you know that at least some of the higher circle and stuff have. You have your suspicions, right? But even to you, if you were to say them all out loud, they sound a bit like conspiracy theories. The Circle of the Harbingers is leagued with the Overlord and working at Ursula Tenebrus's behest. It all starts to sound tinfoil hat. But it's also impossible to ignore everything. So maybe there's some indicators there. If not, it's fine.
Yeah, nothing on the look closely jumps out at me.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure I will see you again on smoother roads, which is sort of a thing.
Take your gem and go.
The dismissal last word not sitting well with him, but he's not letting it go.
What's Wynn doing?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Wynn, what's are you just like basically poised and at the ready, on guard? One hand clamped to a wound, not ignoring all of that, any of that kind of stuff, or what's your body language with the general, towards the general, that kind of stuff? And I'm going to then ask Viren's kind of like what your overall like sort of demeanor has been in this, whether it's like sort of coiled cat or totally at ease or any of that kind of stuff. So, but James.
Um, uh, I think, uh,
How
yeah,
do go ahead?
I'm not really showing signs I'm listening to the goings-ons of the Harbingers. I'm fixated on Sifley.
Did you know them in the past, or just kind of know of them back in the day?
I would not have known them.
It was simply like you knew of their order, like that particular order.
Yeah,
Okay, but not necessarily of them. So this is simply someone of that order who's in an impossible position, simply
yeah.
uncomprehendable position. Gotcha. How to here coldly stare each other in the eyes. You know, I'm robbed of some of the body language exchange stuff you'd be using, but certainly, although Sifley does a fine simulation of it because the helmet over their head, the eye sockets do glow and give the impression of that, even though and whatever effect that is, um, or you know where that's coming from, who knows? But something else entirely. So Eki, barring anybody else doing anything, we'll walk back over to Sifley and say, "With your leave, my lady." And she just, it's the, it can't be anything other than an annoyed flick of the wrist, flick of the wrist, kind of, you know, quit being ridiculous and do it, kind of thing. Um, the two thoughts that I have in my head for what this teleport looks like, I'm not in love with either one of them. Um, I'm going to say that Mike has right of first refusal on what this looks like, followed by probably James. And barring that, really anybody. The thought I had was they either kind of like turn two-dimensional and then sort of the image of them seems to turn sideways and they're gone, or they go into the gem somehow and then the gem goes away. But I prefer it not be a Star Trek teleporter shimmer.
The first one sounds cool.
Which one?
That first one.
The two-dimensional kind of. They look first like a mirror and
Which
then
is
they.
also a Star Trek effect. That's okay. It's a cool Star Trek effect.
It's not the most common Star Trek effect.
No.
I'll take that. I'll take that for anything. Uh, you know, and maybe the crystals are different. Maybe each one of these things is different. But in any case, they sort of become still and then turn, and then they're not there.
Well, there's a victory for you.
You know, we still got a bunch of bandits, right?
Yeah. I think as soon. I mean, so Rowan, how quickly? I mean, by the time Carabas says that, are you already turning back to regard the bandits? Like you've already just put Rowan out of, or put Eki out of mind as soon as you, like, as soon as the effect takes place? Or are you still kind of looking where they were? I mean, your attention
No,
was.
they are not a threat anymore because they are gone.
Okay.
Ridiculous.
I want to see what the boop was before I say anything.
Oh no, I'm
That's-
just
James is just memeing.
miscellaneous stuff.
I like that. The I mean, I am not generally. So the leader of this and then they did pull back. They were generally like, I mean, the guy was saying something about messing with a harbinger, and that kind of had some of them kind of looking sidelong at each other in the first place. And then when the whole stuff with Sifley, when Sifley steps down, and honestly, when Wynn came in and did his like spooky, I'm gonna keep everybody in the cavern busy simultaneously thing, by being terrifying. Generally speaking, they've come to the conclusion that you are people with whom they would rather not fuck. Categorically. Pardon my here. If you fine ladies and gentlemen wouldn't take it amiss, we seem to have come to a great misunderstanding here. You seem to want to pass through. I am very inclined to let you. I would frankly rather be gone from this place rather soon as well. What with the structural instabilities mounting, as it were, maybe we should all go our separate ways and be merrier across the board. Everyone benefits. No one dies specifically at this moment as a result of bad judgment on the part of the other party. He does not say, please. Not out loud. What say you? I want him to say parlay so bad. Parlay? Anyway.
I'm just there to make sure he doesn't
I mean,
cause
they
any
are
trouble on the leaving with the people who are behind us.
in terms of the direction you guys basically want to go. He's kind of in the way, but that's a fixable problem. And I don't know. I'm looking at basic moves, any stuff that happens there, but I don't know what all. I'm not trying to like scrape through everybody's character sheet simultaneously to see if there's any particular thing you can do here to truly cow these guys or bring them to heel or anything of that nature. That's not a dot on the screen. That's an actual thing.
I was gonna say, in the fiction, it sounds like they already are.
Well, they're certainly
sound cowed.
They're certainly cowed. They're not like, oh please, great leaders, lead us out of here and we will be your slaves forever. They're not at that point, but they're happily willing to get out the way, as it were, if you're inclined to.
So Bill or Mike, where do we want them to go?
In front of us.
Not in front of you.
Yes.
Any vile things back to the depths from whence he came.
Given that,
yeah,
they will happily sort of sidle sideways, everyone carefully keeping their eye on each other and, moving about. I think their primary focus, honestly, it seems to be somewhat split. Rowan hasn't done anything, and that's almost
I was about to say,
scarier.
If they want some show, they can do some show.
Well, the fact that you made the other harbinger leave without really doing anything is to them at least scary enough. But honestly, most of them seem to be keeping their eye on Wynn because It's a shadowy place where they're underground. This is one of the recognizable as like some remnant of the O'Hare, and already did a scary thing, a couple of scary things. They want no part of this. So they're inclined to, get gone. So, still in this chamber, there's some grumbling about not being able to, get anything out of this or anything like that, and the leader's like, "Shut up! We get to leave with our lives. That is better than a sword." And sort of making the departure. There's some grumbling from the crowd as well behind you, Anne, because but at the same time, that sort of pragmatic, humanism of this, they should be. It'd be nice if, karmically speaking, they got their comeuppance for what they were up to, but at the same time, am I willing to bleed to make sure that happens? No, not particularly, not unless I have to.
I mean, if nothing else, Virens has got something for them to do.
Virens has got. Say that one more time.
Something for them to do.
Oh, the townspeople or the townspeople?
The bandits.
Oh, the bandits. Well, then by all means.
So he's briefly going to look back at Wynn and ask them, "You are sure of yourself that this is the way to safety?"
Yeah.
Okay. So Virens is going to step up and basically bang his spear on the ground and say, "You talk a lot. Join us or die."
So there's the "you talk a lot" thing. He starts to do this sort of obsequious, like, "Oh, you compliment me, sir," kind of half bow, tilting of the head kind of thing. And he's halfway down when the "join us or die" thing lands, and he's kind of like caught, like, kind of his hands come up and say, "Excuse me? What? I'm sorry? We were leaving."
There are people still in the city. Guide them down here through this place to safety, and we will protect you when you rejoin us.
So he kind of looks he looks over his shoulder just to everybody else there, like his other people.
Am I hearing this?
Like, are you? I'm not hallucinating. He just, like, that's the body language. He doesn't say any of this stuff, but he's just like, "So you want us to continue to usher more people down here, and you will see them to safety here, through here, and then you will save us?"
Yes.
Why would you do this? Why would we trust you to do this? I mean, with all due respect to the man with the very large spear, but...
Because I am an orc of Tosk, and that is what we do.
So I feel like there's a shove that needs to happen here, mechanically speaking, to tip him over. Does that sound right? And I don't know if you have a particular custom-made shove, or if we're talking about like a talk sense thing.
I have talk sense whether they want to listen or not with plus blood. So yeah, I have.
That's what I thought. I thought it was somewhere along that line. And I love the toss thing there. Okay. This feels like you're carrying it pretty much on your own, but so I don't think there's a hope, like a helping hope kind of thing.
I can go stand menacingly or supportively behind him.
Menacingly and or supportively. I'm fine with that. Do you guys have a bond? I didn't manage to attack it. That was
Yeah,
so
we
fun.
do.
Yeah.
We have mutual bonds, and Virens can point out, or if these guys really need it to be pointed out, our companion here is of the people who built the statues that protected you. They have been guarding this place for generations. Do not question us now.
All right. All right. It sounds like, so talk sense with blood, whether they want to listen or not, with hope. Did I tally all that up correctly? With hope, since you're acting with bonds? I
Yep.
think the
And there's
response
a
to the
10.
dice roll. And there's a 10. Let me look. Look at that. Baron's rolls a 10 on blood. All right. Talk sense. If they're willing to listen, we're rolling with blood, so it doesn't really matter. They do as you ask to the best of their ability. You do not owe them a favor, although you did offer one.
It's something we would have done anyway, so it's
Yeah,
not anything
sure.
special.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the leader, we're not going to get his name just yet, but I have one in mind. Take you all in, like you see him see you in great glory, and I will simply say my apologies to Carabas and Anne for not having him be as impressed with you two as he is with Viren's fully
I
armored.
don't want him impressed.
And
with me.
exactly, and the looming O'Here right, at his shoulder, and Rowan sitting there like having not yet done anything, and having somehow made the big scaries leave. And well, yeah, Carabas can be affronted for the both of you, Anne. And he starts to say, very well, and this bigger kind of hulking second in command kind of guy behind him is like, now wait and he, without even, just turns and, have you ever seen the videos of the slapping competitions that people have? Like, it's like competitive slapping. These great, like, biker-looking dudes with no shirts on, like, just standing there letting somebody else take a full-on open-handed whack at each other's heads.
Because why not?
I mean, because, yeah, people, Russian roulette is apparently stupid, so let's do this instead. But he fetches this guy such a ringing slap without even, like, he was waiting for it. And he just turns around and just hauls off. Now, I mean, he's not a huge guy, but man of violence. And he cuts off before he says it. And he just lets the momentum carry him the rest of the round and kind of goes into a slight little, like, tip back, all the weight on his back foot with his heel extended of his right, toes up. As I was saying, very well, we will be this city's saviors and guide them down where your fine leadership will see them to safety. We will be the human chain that will, and he's going on, and we will do that now. We will all do that now. We are all doing it now. We will be the human chain and usher more in and save who we can of this city before the statues come crumbling down. And he's, they're kind of, if you'll excuse me, and he's kind of going past, he's smiling and nodding, and occasionally, like, almost like Kramer from Seinfeld, kind of flinching back from the scowl of the innkeeper's wife as he goes up the stairs, as he realizes a little bit too close to her and she may go for his trachea. But, ushering people back up to this thing. And actually, the innkeeper will kind of, sort of murmur to Anne, it's like, do you think are they actually going to do this? Do we trust them?
As a player, I feel this is a good opportunity to make good on that promise that we made to that family. Like if they have a confrontation now,
I,
either Anne or the innkeeper's family asking this guy specifically about that son, that would be good.
no, I was loving the way that you were commanding them, because that would be a perfect
Yeah.
solution to get out of a place that somebody put us in.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if we wanted to nail that particular subplot shut,
Absolutely.
this feels like a good moment for it. But if you feel that it's in good shape, then I'm happy.
Yeah. I mean, they don't need reassurance unless you decide that you want to.
I could see just something simple as the innkeeper's wife saying, you know, kind of the equivalent of a grandma grabbing his ear and saying, "And you make sure my son and his family are with you."
Absolutely, my lady. Yes, absolutely. Could you
That's
tell us
Jane
what
saying
they?
that?
Yeah. This is it's
Bernard and Jane.
Bernard and Jane. Oh, Bernard and Jane. Yeah, Jane was saying that, and it's the leader, the thug leader, who's like, yes, absolutely, yes, my lady, we will absolutely send your boy and his lovely wife down as soon as we see them. Never asking, of course, what they actually look like or anything of that nature, but if it gets his ear back, he will happily promise the world. More power to him. I mean, you could, if you want to truly reassure the man, you could, go up to the entrance and keep an eye on things there to make sure that they don't get antsy and take off, kind of thing. But that's.
No, I trust the orc in all things.
and his threats of violence, and their effectiveness on the weak, if not weak-willed, then at least weak-spined.
The spear has a strong influence on the weak-minded.
Thank you. I like it. That's
The
a good quote.
spear. I like that. All right. Yes, we could definitely put a pin in. We could definitely, I think, put a pin in that plot. Is not everybody thinks of the forges, but and actually, I would say that actually probably the innkeeper goes up, or the innkeeper's wife goes up to harangue them a bit more, and at her suggestion, he used the word loosely. They even send out a few outrunners into the nearby streets and so forth to let people know that some heroes have found a way out through the forges. Come here, come with us if you want to live. We'll guide you down and out, kind of thing, and so on and so forth. And it's you. While other folks are doing other things down below, and you see her coming back down, with the boy and his wife, probably about maybe just not even very many, 10, 15 minutes later. Although not the warm reunion we might have expected, probably the reunion that you expected, because at that point, mostly what it is the boy's trying to stay out of it. His wife and the boy's mom are snipping back and forth about, well, we went to the inn and you had already left us, and so yeah, it's daughter-in-law and mother-in-law back and forth about.
And Fairbass has conveniently found a place where he's not
I am
easily
fascinated
seen.
by this geode, sort of inside the geode, looking at it, see what maybe what the general was about.
Possibly scouting about, maybe I'm scouting ahead somewhere far away from these people and
Yes.
the promises that might have been done. So while this is happening, and the organization, the Human Chain, the Human Fire Bucket Brigade, or whatever we're having here as we're passing people down is happening. I think probably the O'Hear / Rowan. I'm picturing Gimli and Gandalf talking about what one knows and what the other might guess about how to pass through this, these cursed mines of Moria kind of thing, as they maybe confer and try to figure out or remember in Wynn's case how to get out and through this thing and start moving people along. Does that sound about right? As Virens apparently takes upon himself to save yet more of the city?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so who's taking the lead on figuring out where to go, what next kind of thing? Um, Actually, I'm gonna call on one of your moves here. You've got the move the lost ones.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking here, who's with you? So from here in, so the upper, call it the upper forges, the lesser forges, and the storage, the lesser forge and the the stores and the lesser forge and so on and so forth. As you venture further in here and try to remember kind of where you were and which passages to take and that sort of thing. The Lost Ones thing, you can command lore about the curse that plagues you, the nature of undeath, the plight of your people. I'm thinking more of the plight of your people and the ruins they've scattered throughout the world. When you arrive somewhere you've been before, I'm gesturing broadly at this place, tell us what it was like back then and tell us one thing that hasn't changed. Please, if you would.
I had the whole thing on this.
You had a whole thing on this?
I wrote up. I figured you would ask me about this, so I wrote up a whole paragraph about Red Valley.
Oh, great.
Uh, so I mean, this place used to be not a metropolis, but a great center of craft and knowledge, and there were regular ships coming in and out, or regular travelers coming from the Jalopes and their capital down in the
So coming up, yeah?
yeah, coming up. And I mean, the forges are the same, but they are they are the same, but they aren't. They have fallen into disrepair, and even the ones that are still running aren't even reaching the skill of the most basic apprentices back when Red Valley was at its peak.
So is it your estimation that whatever might be stored in these upper most common stores is most likely going to be stuff that's been made or created from the forges since the fall of your empire, and thus likely paltry things?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's when we get down further that you'll find some actual treasures and where we'll find our way out.
I see. Okay. I like it. Thank you. That's great. Just looking about. Oh. I hadn't really seen the picture that Mikey that you put up for Rowan. I really like that. All right, I'm just looking at. Okay, so when I'm looking at, wait, pull up the basic moves here. I'm looking. I don't know that there really is necessary. I guess. Help me out with this. This is occasionally one of those times where I'm kind of like, well, I want this particular kind of move, and I don't really necessarily see it. But I'm looking for that. How well does Wynn remember the way, and how well does he navigate, kind of thing. And I'm not sure if we really have a move like that. Unless it's just overcome.
Or it could be kind of look closely,
Yeah, it could certainly be look closely because finding,
since that'd be sense.
yeah. Although, well, you can't be in despair, right?
Nope.
Even though all of your stuff is currently, no, we healed you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we healed you
People
up.
were very nice and
Everyone was very
didn't
nice and
want a rampaging ghost.
yeah. Yeah, even look closely looks like a weird kind of fit.
Are you just trying to see if I'll get us lost?
Well, I'm curious as it's more about me wondering, like how straightforward it is because the dice are somewhat indicative of that, and to wear my wear my intentions on my sleeve. Rowan has this some earth powers and stuff like that would be kind of fun to have to uncork those if you guys end up in kind of like a dead end kind of thing, or any weird stuff that happens from wacky dice rolls, right? But barring that, I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, we don't need to roll necessarily.
So
Yes, speak up.
there is a travel move.
Oh God, thank you. I'm looking at the basics and I'm forgetting completely about those kinds of things. And that
And basically all that one is don't really worry about moves. Just narrate what happens.
yeah, and I don't want to get into the whole like the journey because if I remember the journey correctly, basically like you go around the table with one person coming up with the obstacle and somebody else coming up with like how they overcame it with possibly a dice roll. But let's do that in short. So since this is this gets to be your area, sort of. Actually, let me grab. Where'd my fellowship book go? Where did my fellowship book go? Where's that journey thing at? Do you remember what page it's on, or do you know? Do you have it handy?
No, but I know where it is in the short one.
In the short
The
one?
PDF thing.
In the which? Sorry, you broke up there for a sec.
Sorry, in the short PDF version, like the player's guide one.
Right. Could you just the kind of hit the overview for me?
Okay, I'm just going to note along journey shows on page 8.
Really?
Of the
Yeah,
I'm looking
so
of the short document.
Yep.
No,
So a
this-
journey is a story from point A to point B. During the journey, each player tells us one event happened along the way, starting with whoever you like. The overlord may frame the event by asking a player a question first, like, what did you find off the beaten path? Or what is really dangerous about this leg of the journey? Or who did you meet on the road? After someone describes the event, they choose another player at the table and they tell us how they handled the event. Give each event as much or little detail as needed. The Overlord also sets a scene during the journey, telling the Fellowship how their minions made their journey harder. After every event is resolved, you make it to your destination.
All right. I don't want to do. Obviously, we're not doing the whole kit and caboodle.
I mean, it could be fun.
Well, okay. That's not a bad thought.
So throughout a journey, each player will create one scene, help to resolve that one scene, and help to resolve one scene. First player to set a scene will also be the last player to resolve the scene. If the scene leads to combat or some other party participates in, that still counts as one player resolving the scene. The player who decided to solve it that way counts as the one who resolved it.
Right. Okay. So I like the idea of this partly because it gives us it'll give us a really good picture, and it doesn't have to all be in the forges. It could also be the valley without, as we get outside and that sort of thing. Does that tickle anybody else's fun bone? I like the idea, but which is to say I'm basically down with it if you guys are. But if you guys, I want to know if you guys are. So, what do you think?
I feel that that's a good move if what we're doing is journeying like through the mists. If we're going to spend some time on this, not just like we made like 200 feet of progress through the forest.
No. Yeah,
Like if we're going to go
if we're gonna do it,
yeah.
it wouldn't be worth doing it if it didn't move us really to a point where we can decide what we're gonna do with all these refugees. Like that is we're that I think that gets us. I feel like that's a great thing. We can go right from here all the way through getting out of Red Valley, or at least away
That
from
sounds good
Red
to
Valley.
me. Then yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Now I really do want to find out where the hell it is in the book though, because I don't have the PDF immediately to hand, and my machine is being. I don't want to fiddle with anything right now because I'm afraid other stuff will stop working. So now if I just need to find the bloody thing.
It's
I know you said page 8, but that's in that players thing, and I've got the book, and I'm like trying to find it in there, and I'm not finding it.
it's in the front pages of the book on page 8.
Really?
Yes.
All right. I'm
Literally, that's what it is on the long PDF I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the hard copy.
Good Lord. If it were a snake. All right. All right. So, is it okay if we start with when?
I'm fine with that.
Um,
I just
go ahead.
nothing. I just don't want to take up too much spotlight.
No, this isn't so much spotlight as you being GM for a bit and telling us about like the next obstacle, because actually going to be handing the spotlight off to somebody. I would say Rowan, but it could really be kind of anybody.
Well, yeah, he gets to the person describing the event gets to choose the player to say how they handle the event.
Right. There is a either very enticing or fascinating deep within the guts within the lower levels of the forges, really beyond the part that was forges. And given what my impression is of Wynn's history with his people, I don't know that he was a great studier of the esoteric or whatever. So I don't know that it necessarily would have been that even familiar with Wynn. But something fascinating or some ancient mystery or just a shiny giga catches is in your path, because it could be a great gigantic bloody thing, or it could be a side room with like shinies up on a rack. I don't know. What is this fascinating thing, and in what way is it enticing to examine or study or mess with or poke or acquire? And then who do you want to have deal with that particular thing? Is that fair? Is that cool? Because there are great wonders down below here, right? So let's hear about one of them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are lots of great wonders down here that dwarf anything the modern modern groups can come up with, certainly here. And I think what was found was actually it's a what was found was actually created by the Drolopes that Theo here had left here as kind of a testament to skill. It's a Uh, it's a large gem.
Okay.
Uh,
When you say large, like the size of my fist, or the size of the size of a 3-story house?
no, 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 no. Closer to the size of your fist.
Okay.
That has been inlaid into a uh, kind of mithrily.
Okay. That's a word. It's a word now.
It, mithril. Yeah.
Mithrily. Sure.
But the a kind of mithril and gold mixture, which the technique has long since been lost, and is wrought finer than
So
most
it's
can
like
get.
it's got kind of a filigree around it, or it's like actually set into the gem itself.
Repeat, you kind of cut off.
It's like a wrapped around the thing like a filigree, or is it like the metal is sort of set into the gem itself?
No, it's kind of wrapped around it.
Okay. Okay.
But the gem is, who knows? Or it was originally the necklace was originally made for one of the great sorcerer kings of the north before that whole group
Okay.
fell.
Okay. Where do you see it here? Is it like set around the neck of a statue? Is it in a case? Is it hanging from the ceiling? Is it floating in midair?
Oh, I like the floating in midair, but kind of like a base of crystals. The
Like, oh, so
ley
like
line crystals.
like above and below it, kind of ceiling and floor, and it's just kind of there between.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so who's got to cope with this thing, Shiny?
I was thinking either Rowan or Carabas. Carabas if he wants shiny, or Rowan since
You
it's
you get
kind
to
of
choose.
magically. Well,
Who do you want to see have to deal with this thing?
I want Rowan to.
Okay. Rowan, this is well, what is it? I mean, how the gem wrapped in the filigree reminds me somewhat of the gem that Sifle was carrying when she stepped out of the geode, like sort of like the gem, a crystal within a matrix within a matrix of wires and things.
Mhm.
Except that was, while a fine thing, crude visually by comparison to this.
So you're saying this is the finer model?
Yes.
It's the top end.
It's a, you know,
Luxury brand.
that was a working, a fine and ancient working artifact. This thing is that plus art. And perhaps a bit more. Not without risk with something like this. If it's not obvious, if it's not the obvious risk of the thing, just to have a thing of this nature, one that's put in mind in your acts. It's a fine thing until it's a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Well, since Rowan has never seen anything but the crude working version before, in this one, I imagine he's going to be a bit starstruck, just like wide-eyed about it, and just like kind of walk up to it, and I'm sure Win is going to be like, be careful touching that.
The room, if you'll forgive me a little bit of narration, is really perfectly circular. The room, um, you're not passing through it so much as passing by it. Has the one entrance. The walls just it's a perfect circle, and really not even very tall, like maybe 8 feet up. Just a perfect disc room carved out, and then like a carving just line carvings that may be vague representations or abstract representations of ley lines of the world kind of thing. So like almost map-like, but without enough information to truly provide the context necessary to use it as a map. But it seems to provides that impression. And then, as Wynn said, like dead center, above and below, like a cluster of crystals in the stone floor and a cluster of crystals in the stone ceiling that really provide the only light in a beam of it or a column of it, with that thing floating in there.
So, okay, so it would be like somebody treading out into those crystals.
No, I would say like the crystals are
I-
like the size of like a fire. Like they're not. It's not. It's just crystals in the cluster above and below. Like the rest of the floor is just bare and carvings and stuff, and it's in that center area like the size of a campfire pit, like kind of like that big. That's the crystals just directly above and below where the necklace is. So you wouldn't necessarily be, unless you want to be, it's cool if you
no,
guys prefer.
I just wanted to make sure I was getting the scope of it.
Yeah, the rest of the floor, like make the room like 30 feet across or something like that. The center is maybe only like 3 feet of crystal in the center above and below, and the rest of it's the carved lines in the walls and the ceiling and that sort of thing.
Well,
Do you want
part
it
of
precious?
me does not want to be a bandit like the ones we just, all of the ones that we just sort of like, you know, press ganged.
Right.
But I mean, since this belonged to Wynn's people, it's kind of like, I'm sure after a few minutes of Rowan nerding out about cool stuff about this thing that
he
Wynn
didn't say
already knew.
he didn't say not touch it. He said be careful about touching it. So that's practically permission.
I mean,
It's because their language is so imprecise as to leave you that opening.
so I think if that's the case, Rowan is going to like very carefully, Indiana Jonesy-ish, just sort of like walk up to it, carefully take both hands upon it, and then he's basically, as soon as he wants to touch it, he's just going to open his mind in order to speak with the stone itself.
That's a brilliant idea.
I love it. Is there a role associated with that?
I mean, if we want to go through the move, I speak softly with it.
I love that. Please do that for me, because I just
Alright.
love that idea of it.
And I feel like it'll probably be that like grabbing the Infinity Stone style like bright flashes of light for the camera. But,
Yes, I'm 100% behind that.
all right, let's take a look. It doesn't say I roll anything special with it, but if I remember correctly, speak softly can be like wisdom. Okay.
Yes, wisdom is speak softly is wisdom for sure.
Alrighty. Here we go.
Okay. Okay. I love this a little bit too much, I think, but that's okay. When you have a quiet chat with someone, so that's a 6, you may roll plus wisdom. Then ask 3 questions from the list. On less than a 9, one of their answers is not helpful. Either they refuse to answer or they reveal a terrible truth you didn't want to hear, their choice. On a 6 minus, one of their answers is false. So 3 questions, if you please.
Okay.
I think this beautifully sets the tone for the inherent danger of this thing, while also conveying its power. So that's
Yes.
you're welcome, I guess. Question mark.
So I guess the first one is going to be, what can you tell us about this stone and what it does? Because I'm thinking the ley line map, but that's just me.
Wishful thinking.
I mean, helpful thinking.
I open your inner sight to perceive the flow of power throughout the world, the ebbs and flows, and those who would draw from the well, or who are drawing from the well, where that flow has been disrupted, and where it might be healed. I connect you with it in a myriad of ways that, as we spend time together, I can open for you.
Ooh, lovely.
I like everything about that.
I like everything about this, says the guy who will occasionally say, please hurt me more. Hurt my character more. Okay. What's the next one?
I mean, yes, I will take the bag full of MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do I need to be wary of with dealing with this stone?
Okay, hang on a second. I have lain dormant here for eons. Last used by the Great Wizards of the North. The Great Wizards of the North? Are we referring, just quick check-in, was that something that you guys were talking about that was like birth of the Harbingers kind of organization, or something else entirely?
Oh,
or
no,
some aspect of you were just tossing it out there.
I was just tossing it out there to make it magically for Rowan.
Gotcha.
But like sorcerer, so it's not necessarily a good gemstone.
Crafted for the sorcerers of the North by the greatest craftsman of the dwarves, wielded by many in the of the kingdom that rose before the Ohir, before it was brought to this place. It has been ages since I was last touched by my mistress, and I would do great works again. And since I am sure that my lady Ursula is long passed from this world, that I can best serve a servant of the mysteries such as yourself.
Well, I'm not going to like that. But
So yeah, the thing to worry about here is this thing apparently was last wielded by the people of Ursula Tenebros, and specifically her and actually, do we want it to be bang on the nose Ursula, or another entity that, like, rather than me saying Sauron, do I instead say Morgoth? Like equivalent? You know what I mean? Like,
but if in that analogy I'm Gandalf, do I not know Sauron is Morgoth?
no, Morgoth is the guy that Sauron was the lieutenant for.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Fair.
So like,
Fair enough.
so what I'm saying is,
like Lord of the Ring lore that.
well, exactly. I'm a total nerd in that. But do I say Ursula, or do I say something that you would know from ancient like myth, beyond legend, beyond myth, lore, would be like they who came before Ursula in the same but much greater role of the Overlord once upon a great long while ago.
I'm fine with that one, and you can just leave it indistinct until we.
Until I come up with a really good name and some stuff like that. So the name, the thing that chills you is that, yeah, this was a plaything of the person who considered Ursula like a useful lieutenant, or would have, had they crossed paths. Who knows? All right, hit me with one more, and we'll move on to the next bit.
All right. What would the stone have us do next with it?
I would feel once again the light touch of the mists of this world upon my skin, to feel the light of the sun, to breathe, to feel the breath of air. I simply want to be near life again and feel that joy of purpose.
I'm gonna attempt to destroy it with all that goes around.
So just to bear in mind.
Just
what
to
were the
bear in mind,
three
one-
things
one
that we
is
know
true,
about.
one is true, one is false, and I think you could probably identify the one that's a terrible thing I would rather not know. That
I
one's.
can ID that one perfectly.
Okay. Yeah. Used
So-
to be Morgoth's dreidel is probably not the thing you wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, I think Rowan's going, after breaking connection with the rock, he's going to be like, okay, important rock, important to us, maybe dangerous.
So is
Don't
Maybe.
really.
I mean, so is a sword, but
Used to belong to the Overlord.
somewhat
The Overlord's Overlord.
somewhat simplifies it, but sure. I mean,
Yeah.
why wouldn't Rowan simplify it in this case?
Yeah. So.
Are you asking for
Yeah.
input or
Yeah.
just letting them know what you?
Yeah, just kind of letting
Letting
dread
us know
wash-
what you're going to do.
And now it's like, and I think it would be better if we don't leave it where we just saw her minions.
Fair enough. Oh, I think it's a fair bet that they didn't know it was here, because if they had, they'd have been all over this. Yeah,
But I am worried about them coming back.
that's fair.
So, for now.
And besides, of course, it would be better if it was in your skilled hands
Certainly
rather than,
yes. Far better in my hands than to keep, and if nothing else, to keep it out of the hands of the enemy. Far better. Rowan. So do you wear it? Do you tuck it away in a pouch? What do you do with
I
it?
mean,
How do we see Rowan, double a bit over your belt? I don't know.
yeah, I think this is like grab out a pouch, hold it really bundled up really tight, and be like, "This is supremely dangerous." At which point he offers it over to Varens.
Gandalf
Ooh.
scooping up the ring off of the floor.
Into the envelope, picking it up from the envelope rather than actually touching the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're handing it to Varens.
Yes.
Varens?
What?
And I'm sure Rowan's going to say and I trust you to do what's needed with it.
As a player, I'm thinking destroy it.
Sorry, are we continuing this on as one single obstacle, or is this just?
This is
I will say that I really read the move more as a series of montages. I'm
right,
not
and I'd
sure-
like to skip on to the next one, which is I just wanted to know how this was disposed on before we skip on to the next
Yeah.
one.
I was just making sure I was understanding.
I was
Yeah.
overcomplicating things.
That's okay. So
Beautiful
Varens,
montage.
I mean, what do you do? And then we're gonna
Like if he's handed this thing, he'll tuck it away. That's fine. So,
Okay. What kind of? I mean, I just want a quick take on his reaction to having Rowan hand him this, because you have an area of expertise, and generally speaking, magical rocks aren't in the bracket.
If Rowan's handing it to me, then it's safe for me to handle. That's what he's thinking.
All right.
So he's yeah, okay, that's the thing.
All right. It's tucked away. Rowan, do you try to see where he puts it, or do you try not to see where he puts it?
I am going to trust Varens with it.
Okay. All right. As you and Wynn, and mostly Wynn, kind of guide your way up and out of this place, you emerge not at certainly the edge of the wall, but from carefully crafted kind of. I'm reminded of like the little cave that the dwarves found themselves tumbling down into, dealing with the wargs before they're brought to Rivendell and the Hobbit movies or something like that. But you come up out of basically a crack in the, like you find yourself just winding out through a crack in the earth that, and enough double back passages to make it look for all the world as though this cave, if you were coming into it from the outside, would, dead ends in multiple points before you'd ever get any further in. But coming out, it's fairly straightforward. As you're emerging up at ground level, and no idea why the stuff doesn't come down into the caves, you emerge out into the mist, and you're probably a good, at least probably a quarter mile past the walls, out in the red forest, out in the mists. And what is the risk here that's posed to, I mean, you're bringing quite a few, I mean, probably at least close to, I mean, there was 30 people already with you, all of the looters, the people that you gathered up, is probably at least close to 100 people with you. What effect, what risk does this mist have? Are you dealing with now that, or the group dealing with, of the effect that the mist might have on these people as you're now out in them and having to travel forward? And then again, who's addressing that?
Was that question directed towards?
Yes, that's you. You're next. So tell us about
Okay.
the mist and the effects on the people, and then like who's going to.
Oh yes. So the mist can, much as we saw before, can deceive and distract people, so that they can get dragged off to be the mistract or whatever I had said
I
before.
like that. I love that phrase.
So, or the misdaddled. I can't remember.
Misdaddled, either one, and possibly both, depending on the person.
That might be severity. So, I would say, Wrangler Ann, how are you keeping the people focused here?
Are they largely human? Are we're mostly talking humans. Are there any dwarves mixed in? Any other peoples, or is it largely humans from that local, from the local neighborhoods there?
I think it started off as mostly humans, but as the word spread that, way out, then you ended up with other, I'm going to say mostly working class people. So mostly people from sort of that area, working
Okay.
class area of town.
So, Rowan, do you? I mean, I don't know that you guys spoke about it in character before. Rowan, do you briefly sum up like the potential effect? Anne might have already been perfectly familiar with them, but I mean, do you sum up?
I feel like this is a common enough issue. Everybody should be aware.
Yeah,
of it.
the mists have this effect, and it isn't so much Rowan speaking to you say, okay, deal with this. This is just you're ready for it. How do you still your own mind?
I've been
How do you
thinking about this for a while now.
Okay, so jump in. I want to hear it.
No, I mean not me personally, but Anne
Anne
was
has
definitely
gotcha.
thinking about this.
Gotcha. All right, so hit me. Hit
okay.
us.
A second. So there's a couple of things that Anne is doing. So one is by giving people something specific to do, and kind of that like buddy system, making sure that there's somebody with you so that you're not both going off. And it's sort of like, I hate to say this, but it's sort of like summer camp. It's sort of like you pick out one person out of a group of 10, and they're the they're the leader of that group, and the 10 people are in a buddy line, and to focus on what's ahead, and keeping them together. We may sing songs, we may do other things here to try and keep them focused on each other, and not the scary stuff that is that.
Sure. I'm I'm skipping forward to a thing here. I'm trying to get over the squires.
I also have a move, but I don't know that I want. I don't know if you want me to use this now.
Well, tell me what you're
Uh,
talking about, because I'm also looking at
Well,
moves.
I have the move. I've got a bad feeling about this, which is basically when you're certain that something is wrong and you know
Try something wrong
you
here.
may ask you to tell me the safest way out and also the quickest way out.
I think that's
Truthfully.
perfectly fine. Honestly. Uh, I love
There's Mhm.
the idea of keeping them focused past the effect of the mist. So even if they like and continuing to circle really to keeping them on this focus thing. So even if the mist effect starts to take, if the mist starts to take some kind of effect, reminding them of their everyone's got a job thing. Not everyone's gonna. It's not gonna work for everybody, but it'll theoretically it works for enough people that they can keep the rest of them, in place. Um, that's the fastest way out. The safest way out is that plus like kind of roping everybody together. You certainly have the means to do that, but it's going to slow you down because you're working through a forest, and keeping everybody on a chain is not the best way to be maneuvering through that. And plus, if anything untoward happens, as you're if anything needs to rush, then it's chaos and misery and probably people in a very bad situation. So
and that's why I was sort of thinking of it as more as a buddy system.
right.
And every hour or so calling out for buddy check or something like that to keep people engaged on it.
Okay. All right. I don't
I also
think.
singing songs,
Okay. I love the idea.
I think it's more of a kind of a talk sense kind of thing.
I mean,
Really.
I don't
Yeah.
know if we need to do that, but I don't hate the idea. Because really, you're talking about appealing to their emotions or desire. I feel like that's probably appealing to their emotions or desires, but I don't know if I don't need to have a role in every single one of these things. Is part of what I'm saying, and um, in this case, I'm just going to use it as sort of a framing for some other bits. I mean, the problem is you're moving 100 people. Occasionally, you're having them sing. You're moving through the mist-shrouded lowlands and traveling, and you're going to fill up the rest of the day just getting them the hell away from here. And they're not best. I mean, it's a terrifying time. They're the local area, that kind of thing. You can still hear the crack and sounds, and I mean, the city sounds carry weirdly. It's flat, but it seems like you should be getting further away from the city, and every so often there's a noise from the city that seems as though you haven't really traveled very far away from it at all. So the morale of the people is struggling, certainly. The fact you haven't tied everybody together is probably just for the better. There was some fast friends. Where did you keep mentioning the thing about the bond with the small army? Where is that?
Sorry?
You have mentioned a couple times like having a bond with a small army. Where is that? Is that
Oh,
part of
so I don't have so on the list of what is it? Companions.
right?
So the squire doesn't actually have companions.
Right. Yeah.
The text here. But the squires, not companions, can include the following: donkey, horse, politician, ogre, monster, small army.
Right.
Those are just the potential classes,
Sure.
which is
Sure.
where the whole joke about small army came
It's
from.
just basically saying like they could kind of have Um,
I mean,
They-
the same way that you make companions. Like if you have, you know,
zombie.
bond with the group as a
God.
whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually kind of like that. I want an ogre pet, but
Love it. Just out of, I
if
think
Wynn's gonna let me have that.
I will have you. This is what I will have you do because you're trying to be sort of uh,
And- I'm trying to be human.
yeah, you're doing a good job of it. The basic core thing when you spend a scene with someone's side or speak softly to them, you can gain a bond with them immediately. How about we do that? So just let me. Um, and we don't even need to have you roll to speak softly. So you're spending a scene with someone's side. So just you see, guys. I think what we see here is Anne really finding. You see that this weird it's weirdly very resilient and at the same time almost ephemeral bond that humanity forms with itself in times of travel and times of duress, that kind of thing. And you see her form that, these a touch on the shoulder, an encouraging nod, an encouraging smile, occasionally a very sharp word of remonstration. It's all a mix of this, and it's not the same thing every
You know
time.
what's really crazy?
Yeah.
Like it only takes her like half an hour to learn all the family names and probably 2
I love
hours
that.
to learn all 100 names.
I love that. I love that so much. And so yeah, so write down a bond with the refugees of Red Valley.
We get to see Anne wrangling.
Anne wrangling. We get to see Anne
Is
wrangling.
that your army?
Oh, you see Anne wrangling every day. What do you think I do for you guys?
It's a bond
I
of
wrangle you.
it's a bond of refugees. Okay, so
I feel wrangled.
so
Thank you.
looking to Margie and keeping in mind we're close on time, so we may not finish this whole thing, but I do like how fast we're moving along through some space here, which I think is great. Megafauna lives in the lowlands and the mists. And
Oh, we described the next barrier.
what's that? No, I can frame it a bit. Unless you have something that you're totally. I think I
Oh no, I just thought I heard it differently.
um
That I describe the next barrier and I call out who gets to solve that problem.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I like what I mean. It
Yeah.
works either way.
I want to make sure I'm remembering it right. The Overlord may frame the event by asking specific questions.
Okay.
That's probably, yeah, I'm coming around this backwards. No, that's actually a fairly good catch. I mean, you can, obviously, that particular thing is out there in the world to mess with as you see fit.
I'm perfectly happy if you have something in mind for the next barrier. Go for it, or I can jump in with something.
If you had a thing that you wanted to throw out there, because I don't need, it says may frame. I don't need to frame any of it.
I'm gonna point out that the next person is gonna be Viren. And keeping the people together, Viren keeps them safe. That's my logic.
Well, I mean, I feel like then, see, I have such fan fiction in my head about megafauna and orcs, that I feel like I'm almost I should recuse myself from the jury on this one. Prehistory orcs, I should be clear. The bear, you want Virens to be the next one because he's keeping the people safe, and So let's keep this kind of. I mean, I kind of got ahead of myself, but I think it's kind of a fun thing. I love the. I want to know the lowlands by our traveling through it a little bit and the large creatures in the mist. I had thrown that out there, but Bill tied it so nicely into the mist anyway that I really kind of like it. I want to use that and get it on screen, so to speak. There's I mean, these creatures live in the mist, and whether entirely indifferent, drawn by the noise being made by 100 people traveling through here, whatever. One's in your path. So my question, I guess, is this the sort of creature that one typically runs at, runs from, or other, or some other answer?
Walks around.
Walks around, walks over without realizing you're on it. Possibly, I saw Sinbad too recently.
So it's
So
actually
what? Tell us more
it-
about that creature, and then let's hand it off to Varens and see how he addresses this thing.
really so it's a large herbivore, which is to say that it's not looking to eat us, but it's also, you know, very well armed to take care of itself. It's sort of like a say it's sort of like an elk, but because this is a denser forest, you know, the horns are a bit it's got more horns, but they're closer together along the ridge of its head, so it doesn't get caught in the trees and stuff, but it still can do
Ooh,
a heck of a lot of damage.
look at
Um,
what Bill just beeped up in the chat. Oh my stars and garters, that thing is terrifying.
But it's a gentle herbivore.
I mean, what's an herbivore?
So I want to talk about this briefly, and Margie, you can tell me if this sounds like what you're going for. The creature that was linked there was this behemoth from the movie The Mist. That didn't attack the party. The party was too small to be noticed, but the sheer size and magnitude of this thing was itself the source of horror for them. And there may be something that this creature, you know, does or does not do, but just the idea of it is unsettling to the people of this village who we're escorting. Does that sound right?
yeah, I mean, and you can add in some of the the creepy clock-headed the Japanese
Mononoke.
Oh, the little
Mononoke,
yeah.
the kind of
So the idea that, I mean,
moosey
this thing's enormous, but on top of that, there's like lesser creatures that are part of its sort of ecosystem that are also in and around and stuff like that. But I love the idea of it just being so bloody terrifying passively that it's what you had originally
yeah.
said, Margie, reminded me of this kind of guy too, but I think which pops up there. But that's not, it's almost too normal given, you know, what Bill, but I mean,
But this is your scene to write ultimately, Margie, so you tell us what you want to do.
So I like what you were suggesting there, and the idea. I mean, that was sort of the idea is that this was, you know, it's an herbivore. It's not inherently dangerous. The danger comes from, you know, it or from, like you said, just the sheer size. You know,
or God help
you
you
know,
if it starts to feed on the trees and stuff in your area, because all of that shit's coming down. One of the most terrifying, implacable creatures that the mice have to deal with in Mouse Guard is if a moose comes wandering through the territory. Not because it's going to go after the mice, but because there's a goddamn moose in the territory. and it can just damage stuff horribly without really realizing it's done it. Right?
Just think about a kaiju wandering through town. Even if it's not like trying to eat everyone, it just knocks everything over in its path because
So
kaiju
Aaron,
got a kaiju.
Yeah.
you were going for a little bit bigger than I was originally expecting, but I like it even better. So I like the fear of not being that you'll accidentally startle it and it's going to step on you, but literally that it's not even noticing you until it might step on you.
Yeah. And there's a lot of
And
legs
just
to be
that
stepped
terror
on.
that it would induce for the people. That, it's one thing living next to the mist and knowing that there's big plants down there. It's quite another thing to be outside the wall
Yeah.
and face to face with something this size.
And seeing it,
So
you're real.
Viren,
I have to
how
thought.
have you been?
One of the
Go ahead.
first. I have to give Anne one more thought. It's like seeing this thing, and the reason we're handing it off to Viren because this is beyond. There's wrangling people, and then there's this thing. The first thought in your mind is like, how would the walls have ever stopped this thing? Like
Because
it's not.
there's nothing of interest to it behind the walls, as far as I can tell.
So, Viren's.
I think at this point, Viren's is going to get out. Is going to get out his saber-toothed knife, and he's going to get out a small drum, and he is going to start beating something out on that drum. And there's no, there's no discernible like artistic quality here, but it's rhythmic and it's regular and it's like a heartbeat. And
Ooh, I like it.
as he's doing this, there are sort of the shapes that emerge from the mist that are sort of animals. They're not like weird animals. They're just larger, like what you would normally think of as like jaguars and pumas and horses and like just ordinary everyday like Midlands and Highlands creatures. But these are the spirit guardians who accompanied his half brother's expedition, the one that got crushed by the island, and they had been looking for something else, and now they are here to kind of be on the outskirts of our sort of caravan, and just be predators to keep these things away.
Are they? I get the impression they're not enough for something like this size, but that's not the point. That the point is to provide that
I don't know if you've ever
comforting
seen like a small dog hold off a huge animal.
No,
but
no,
they can do it.
I'm not, but I mean, it's half that. Is it fair to say it's half that and half the comfort that they give to the company?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then that's where I was going with it. Was just like, half of the point is to see this thing. And there's initially, of course, that moment of fearful recognition of what these things are as well. But by comparison to that thing,
Are there any orcs with us?
are there? You're the wrangler.
If you want them to be some, then they would probably start drumming as well. This is part of orcish culture.
You said that there might be some in the town, and I think it would be that would help with your
Yeah.
kind of
I think
safety and people who know what it is being part of the group, not just the people like us that are
you might get the.
trying
I
to move
mean,
them someplace.
they could be ones that were traders. They could be ones that are simply not living within the empire, but are still, obviously still retain the culture. I don't know that there are any.
They could just be people that were there on some kind of errand or mission or purpose, and then the walls started shaking.
I'd even put this out there. There's maybe well, this may be, it's not the kind of thing you could ever put in a TV show because no one would be able to communicate, but there may be even a couple of humans who've spent time living in the Tuscan Empire who'd be familiar enough with this culture because, I know that the Tuscan, idea is as long as we're getting a cut of the pie, we don't really care whether or not you adopt our culture or anything like that, but there's no way to not. So I don't know, would those people, would people of occupied areas have picked up this kind of thing, or is this kind of strictly an orc thing? Virens, what do you think?
I think the orcs are fine with other people adopting their culture. Orcs are certainly happy to adopt other people's culture to some extent.
Sure.
They're very much about like, if this works for you, then great.
I don't know if this would have been the kind
So
of thing that they would pick up, or if this is really more core orc.
it's orc shamanism. Like if
Okay.
you did this, you are kind of on board with that mindset. And maybe some people are, and maybe some people consider it very primitive and barbaric. Some people would look down on it, but others would be like, yeah, I'm really into this.
Let's for this one at least, let's stick with the orc. We're in Toscan lands. We'll see how that adoption takes place. But in this case, let's stick with a couple of orcs in the crowd. Also kind of maybe stepping forward. One of which looks very like, very much like he doesn't seem to know much. Doesn't seem to reflect much of the orcish look and feel and culture. But also steps forward somewhat hesitantly, but still participating in this. I love that. And eventually the thing, and we do see some of that, the crushing of the trees, but it's not immediately nearby. But we see the sheer massive destructive capability of the thing as it's blithely moving on. We see what would be the equivalent of like, horse flies and stuff flitting off and on this thing, any one of which would be enough to like be a terrible thing to have to face for this group. But flitting around the body of the thing, and again, not really coming down here, because what does a horsefly want with a flea? And eventually moving off far enough that you can continue. Okay, so we are at, I love that. I love every single thing we're learning about these guys tonight. With that, we are at the bottom of the hour. We've got a handoff to Caribus still, and a handoff back to Wynn still to get us through the journey.
And the Overlord doesn't the Overlord?
Yes. So that's 3. I feel like that would put us very late. And I
Yeah.
feel like this is a wonderful place to pause and know that that's what's coming is the rest of the journey.
Enjoy the magic.
Yeah, and hand off to are we good at this? This is a stopping point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this feels pretty good. Do we do the tally move, or do we wait till the journey's end, or what do you think?
Wait till the end of the journey.
And just kind of take the whole tally up? I'm fine with
What you
that
guys
as well.
think?
I'm fine with either.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And
So I will note next Monday is Labor Day.
Yes. We will be, well, actually, we'll pause here. Thank you guys. A week off and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to stop recording while we worry about the
Sorry.
Calendar?
No, it makes perfect sense.
peregrinations and stuff like that. I want this on recording. Thank you. Wonderful session. You guys are amazing.